Hey guys, as I mentioned, this is going to be just like we were taking notes in class. What you're supposed to copy down is going to be in color. So just a reminder, and at any time you can pause this if you need more time to write something down, or you can go back if you need to hear it again. So here we go. Today we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution and all the inventions and innovations that came along with that. Also, we're going to be talking about how that led to urbanization and immigration in the United States. So let's get started. If you recall, back in Bundle 4, we talked about the War of 1812. And one of the major effects of the War of 1812 was that it led to an economic boom. We were at war with Britain. We had been trading a lot with Britain prior to that. But when we were at war, we couldn't trade. So the United States was forced to manufacture their own goods. So this was one of the major causes of the Industrial Revolution in the United States. So the War of 1812 eventually led to the Industrial Revolution. So one of the first inventors that we're going to talk about today is Eli Whitney. Now, Eli Whitney has a couple of inventions that we're going to be talking about today. But the most important one, and the one we're going to start out with, is the cotton gin. And quite simply, what the cotton gin was it was a machine that cleaned cotton seeds from the white cotton fiber. Now that might sound pretty simple and not that significant, but as you'll find out, it was pretty significant in the United States at this time.
Hundreds of miles to the south, a small plant is creating another economic boom. Cotton. But this one will eventually tear the nation apart. Cotton is native to tropical regions, making the southern states of the U.S. a perfect breeding ground. The valued part is the soft fiber which grows tightly around the shrub's sticky seeds. There are 30 species worldwide. Growing it's no problem. But processing the fiber before it can be spun into cloth is labor-intensive, especially separating the seeds. For years, it could only be done by hand. 1 pound took an entire day. A simple patent filed on March 4th, 1794, changes all that. The cotton gin. It automates the process and deeply divides the country.
The cotton gin transformed not only America, but the world. The concept of mass production using a machine just exploded everywhere.
One man can now process 50 times more cotton. Rockets all over the South. In 1830, America is producing half the world's cotton. By 1850, it's nearly 3/4. Called white gold, cotton supports a new lavish lifestyle in the South. By 1850, there are more millionaires per capita in Natchez, Mississippi than anywhere else on Earth. The richest man in town owns 40,000 acres, nearly 3 times the size of Manhattan Island. The South is thriving on the backs of humans owning other humans. It's called slavery.
So for all of you people who had been putting in your reflection sheets that you wanted to see some America, the Story of Us, hey, there you go, there it was. So as you can see from that video, the cotton gin had a huge impact on the United States. So the major effect was that the cotton gin grew the demand for raw cotton, and then as a result for that, the plantation system and the practice of slavery would skyrocket. Now, it's easy to be mistaken and think that the cotton gin would mean that there would be a need for less slaves, but that's not true. The cotton gin was able to clean cotton so fast that they weren't able to pick cotton at a fast enough pace. And so that's why so many more slaves were needed, was to actually pick the cotton to be put through the cotton gin. So as cotton becomes one of the biggest exports of the United States, if not the biggest export of the United States, you can see that cotton became king. If you look here, the Mississippi River, along the Mississippi River would be a huge area for cotton growing, cotton picking, and cotton production. So, Eli Whitney's next invention that we're going to talk about is interchangeable parts. Now, if you just look at the word, it basically says what it means. He decided to make parts the same way across the board so that if a part got broken, then that part could simply be replaced by a part that was identical to it.
While America debated issues of states' rights, a basic change took place in the way goods were manufactured. Before 1798, mechanical devices from guns to clocks to locks were made by blacksmiths, one at a time by hand. As a result, every mechanical device was unique. But in 1798, the inventor of the cotton gin, Eli Whitney, developed a new manufacturing method based on making nearly identical devices built with interchangeable parts. Whitney came up with his new method while filling a rush order for 10,000 guns called muskets for the U.S. military. The new muskets had a big advantage over older models because they could be easily repaired. Not only that, the new guns could be manufactured a lot faster than the old handmade models, and that was a big bonus during times of war. The concept of interchangeable parts led to the mass production of a wide range of mechanical devices. And as a result, American industry was soon revolutionized.
So, interchangeable parts, again, another thing that creates better efficiency, better productivity in the United States industry. And I just want to say that those are two words that you are going to have to relate to the Industrial Revolution: productivity and efficiency. That's going to be something that you hear over and over again. So, the steam engine. This is the next invention that we're going to talk about, and we're not going to talk about the steam engine specifically, but some things that came about because of the steam engine. Now, the steam engine had been invented over in Europe, and it makes its way to the United States, and from that specific invention, there are other inventions that take place because of it using the steam engine.
With his revolutionary improvement, James Watt smoothed the way for mass production in new factories. The steam engine brought radical change to the field of transportation as well. Engineer Robert Fulton built the first steamship, Claremont, in 1807, which shipped between New York and Albany. It took 32 hours for 240 kilometers. But in 1918, the first greater steamship crossed the Atlantic in 29.5 days. And by the 19th century, steam navigation was booming. Next to the steamship, there was a new invention on its way: the steam-driven locomotive. Only for freight traffic at first, 1841, the Englishman named Richard Trevithick built the first tramway locomotive. From 1814, steam locomotives began to be used for mining rails as well. And in 1830, the first steam train transported people 53 kilometers from Liverpool to Manchester. While in Germany, for example, the first locomotive drove from Nuremberg to Fürth 5 years later, and that was only 6.1 kilometers. The steam engine was the actual motor of the Industrial Revolution. Steam pumps ran in mining pits to withdraw groundwater. Workers could dig deeper into rich ore deposits, and more crude iron was lifted, so there was more material to build new factories, machines, and rails. But with the invention of the combustion engines at the end of the 19th century, the era of steam engines died quickly. But what do you think about the steam engine? Has its once lively pistons really become just a motion of the past, or in terms of the engine?
Yeah, so comment down below. Make sure you like and subscribe. That's exactly what he said after I stopped the video. You knew it was coming. All right, so we're going to talk about 3 separate uses of the steam engine. First, steam engine used in factories. So, Francis Lowell's factory system brought workers and machinery together under one roof. So, things used to be done in different locations. They would transport them to different locations. And so Francis Lowell said, hey, let's put everything under one roof. So turning raw cotton went straight to cloth. Okay, so it used to be turned in from raw cotton to thread, and then it would be moved somewhere else, and then thread would be turned into finished cloth. And so the factory system kind of streamlined that into to where it was done in one location. And so obviously, as with most everything we talk about in the Industrial Revolution, making cloth with machines was obviously way faster than making it by hand. And so that was one of the major reasons that there was such a huge demand for cotton, and why the cotton gin was such a huge invention. The next thing is the steamboat. The steamboat, obviously from its name, was a boat that used steam as power to move. And so Robert Fulton's steamboat provided faster transportation along waterways. And it is sometimes much quicker to travel on waterways than it is by land. But steam also increased land transportation with the steam locomotive, otherwise known as a train. And we know that this is important because of the Transcontinental Railroad. And we'll talk about that a little later on in this lesson. So the major effect of the steam engine and all of those things that used steam power was that it improved transportation and increased productivity, which led to a cheaper product. Okay, when stuff is moved faster, when stuff is made faster, it is cheaper because more stuff is able to be sold. And so that was the effect on the economy of the steam engine. Next, we're going to talk about Samuel Morse and his invention of the telegraph. All right, and the telegraph was simply a machine that sent signals known as Morse code.
The age of instant communication was born on January 11, 1838 in Morristown. It was on that date that Samuel Morse and Alfred Vail first demonstrated the electric telegraph at Vail's Speedwell Iron Works. The telegraph was nothing short of a revolution, enabling messages to be sent much faster than previous means, which relied on messengers riding on horseback. Rapid communication served as the foundation for the nation's economic expansion in the 19th century. New Jersey was at the center of the new telecommunications network, linking the major cities along the East Coast. The electric telegraph went on to play a key role in developing New Jersey's reputation for innovation. Thomas Edison's universal stock ticker and his quadruplex telegraph, enabling 4 messages to be sent on a single wire, incorporated the new technology. Edison's successes with these inventions provided him the means to build his renowned Menlo Park research facility. And it all started with the dots and dashes of the electric telegraph.
It Happened Here, New Jersey is a production of...
Yeah, so shout out to New Jersey. Thanks, guys, for all you do for the United States. So, the obvious effect of the telegraph was that it transforms and improves communication. As you heard in the video, stuff used to have to be sent on horseback. You know, there weren't owls like in Harry Potter that flew messages long distances. Well, I guess there could have been. But the telegraph was something that allowed communication to happen simultaneously. All right, and if you'll recall back to the American Progress painting that we looked at when we were talking about Manifest Destiny, that was one of the things that represented the spread of technology. The angel had the telegraph line wrapped around her arm, and those telegraph poles were being put farther and farther into the West. So, 2 farming inventions that we're just going to kind of briefly touch on. John Deere steel plow. Yes, the John Deere. He is the person whose name's sake has all the tractors and the lawnmowers. Yes, that all started with a simple steel plow, and you can see the picture of it right here. All right, and then also Cyrus McCormick's reaper. So both inventions had a huge effect on making farming more, you guessed it, efficient and productive. Okay, also in the 19th century came the development of an improvement of United States infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is physical and organizational structures and facilities of a society. Some examples of infrastructure: bridges, not trains, but railroad tracks, roads, electrical lines, anything like that that is a part of the physical structure of a society, that is our infrastructure. So anytime you hear a politician talking about America's infrastructure, those are the types of things they are talking about. The first major infrastructure improvement of the United States was the National Road. So this was the first major highway built by the federal government. So you could say that the National Road was pretty much the first interstate highway. So what it did was, as you can see, it connected the Potomac River to the Ohio River, and then it was eventually added on to. So that was the National Road. A lot of times the trails that horses would take. Now keep in mind, this isn't for vehicles. There's no cars yet, but this was for horses and wagons, and the trails that these horses and wagons would take weren't necessarily safe. They weren't level. There was a lot of uneven ground, and so the National Road sought to create some type of highway for safe land travel for horses and wagons. The development of the Erie Canal. Now, a canal is an artificial waterway, and this artificial waterway opened in 1825, connecting Lake Erie, which is where it gets its name. It's one of the Great Lakes. It connected Lake Erie to the Hudson River, and as we know, the Hudson River goes through New York City. So the major effect of the Erie Canal was that it made New York City a major port. And New York City obviously remains a major port. And then, as we've already talked about, the Transcontinental Railroad. So the Transcontinental Railroad, as the name hints at, it was a railroad that spanned the continent, all right, and the continent of North America. So, Transcontinental Railroad connected the east to the west. Now, as you can see from this picture, most of the railroads were in the northeast, but the Transcontinental Railroad attempted to connect all of those in the east to California on the west coast, mainly because of all of the development and gold mining that was taking place in California. So because of this, because the Transcontinental Railroad, and because of all of these factories that are being developed, there was rapid growth in the American economy. So, what effect did this have on culture in the United States? Well, industrialization led to urbanization. And urbanization is the state of increasing the population of a city. There are basically two major types of places that we talk about. There are urban places, urban areas, which are cities, and then there are rural places, which are more country type places. So all of this industry leads to urbanization. Why? Well, people moved to these cities to work jobs. Factories had jobs. People needed jobs to make money. So a lot of people move from rural areas to urban areas to work in the factories. Now, there was a negative consequence to this. Pollution in air from these machines. Pollution in water from just people living in really close proximity. And obviously this ran a lot of risk of disease and sicknesses when a lot of people move into one area really close to each other. Immigration. So immigration, just so you know, is the act of coming to live permanently in a foreign country. So you live in one country and you immigrate to become a citizen of a different country. Now, the first immigrant that we're going to talk about coming to the United States is the Chinese immigrant. Chinese immigrants immigrated to California for gold. Okay, they wanted to work in the gold fields just like all of those people that moved west in the mid-1800s. But they ended up working on the railroad as well and provided a nice, cheap alternative to getting slaves in California. So when California became a state, they did not want slavery to be in California. So what they did was they were able to get that labor force at very cheap from the Chinese immigrants that moved into the United States. So these Chinese immigrants, as they went building the Transcontinental Railroad, they altered the landscape by blasting through mountains. And I'm sure if you've ever watched any type of old Western movie, they usually have a scene or two of Chinese immigrants blasting their way through mountains to make way for the railroad. And then the last group of immigrants that we're going to talk about is European immigrants, specifically the Irish immigrants. So there was a potato famine, and so with famine, famine meaning you do not have food, and that was one of our vocabulary words. The people had to move somewhere to get food, and so that was to the United States. And so as Europeans move and immigrate to the United States, just like with any type of immigrant group, they contribute to the national identity by bringing and sharing their culture. And as you know, that is one of the main things that makes the United States so great, is the melting pot, as it's usually described as, of cultures that make up the United States. So guys, I hope this was a nice little change to what we've done in the past. Maybe it's something that you enjoy and it's something that is beneficial to you, and we can do it more in the future. So just let me know what you think about this. Comment down below. I actually think you can comment below. You're already subscribed because you're already in this class, so thanks for that. And I hope you guys have a great day. Stay classy. But don't leave yet, because class isn't over.